My name is John Carter. I'm 42 years old, born in Texas, raised in discipline, and forged by war. For 2 decades I served in the U.S. Army, most of that time in Special Recon. I've seen things that never made the news, done things that never made reports, and I've survived where others didn't. When I left the service, I didn't look back. I bought land in Montana, far from the noise, and started building the quiet life I thought I'd earned. The air here smells different. Cleaner, like it hasn't been touched by the world yet. Just me, the pines, the wind, and her. Madison Harper came into my life when I wasn't looking for anything. She was calm. Sweet, said she'd always wanted to live off-grid. We met through a supply run in Bozeman. 1 cup of coffee turned into 7, and before long she was helping me raise the walls of the cabin. I told her everything, about my past, about my ghosts. She listened, said she didn't scare easy. We built a life together on my land. Solar panels, a well, a small greenhouse. Every nail, every board, every shovel of dirt felt like a step toward something real. We cooked by firelight, drank whiskey under the stars. She painted the interior walls while I wired the solar batteries. It was simple, honest, at least I thought it was. There's a rule I learned in the field. When things seem too perfect, you're missing something. At first, it was nothing, or maybe it was everything. A cold glance when I wasn't looking, her phone dying more often than seemed possible. Quick walks alone into the woods with no explanation. When I asked, she'd say it was stress, that she needed air, space. She'd smile and press her forehead to mine like always, like nothing had changed. But it had. I remember the first night it really hit me. I was coming back from checking the northern fence line. Hadn't told her I was heading out. I came up quiet, like muscle memory taught me, and I saw her through the window. Not doing anything dramatic. Just standing there. Still. Staring at my desk. My files. The military medals I never put up but kept in a box. Her eyes weren't soft. They were calculating. When I stepped in, she smiled like nothing happened. And that's when the old part of me, the part I thought I buried, started waking up. I didn't sleep that night. I stopped drinking coffee she made for me. I started double-checking the locks she claimed were secure. I ran system checks on the security grid I'd installed, and I set up a new set of eyes, hidden cameras, audio pickups, small motion traps that wouldn't alert anyone but me, and I started watching her, not because I didn't trust her, because I couldn't afford to be wrong. Around that time, a man started showing up more often, Sheriff Jake Sanders. Local lawman, folksy charm, big handshake, said he was checking in, making sure no wildcats had gotten into my traps. Too friendly, too casual, the kind of man who called Madison Maddie a little too comfortably. Something was wrong. I tested them. Left things out of place on purpose. A knife on the counter. I never leave there. A document with a falsified retirement date. A hunting rifle I said I'd loaned to a neighbor but never did. She never asked, never mentioned any of it. That was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. Then came the night she didn't come home. Said she was with a friend. No name. No location. No texts. Just gone. The next morning, she walked in, brushed her hair behind her ears, kissed me on the cheek like nothing happened. I just stood there, staring at her, smiling back. I knew she was lying. She knew I knew, but neither of us said a word. Because lies aren't spoken out loud, not when they're that deep. They exist in gestures, in silences, in forgotten details. And I knew one thing, one unshakable truth, as I looked at her across that kitchen counter. Whatever this was, it wasn't over, not even close. It had just begun. I stopped asking questions. That's the first thing they never teach you in war. Sometimes silence is your only weapon. You don't ask. You don't confront. You observe. And that's what I did. For 2 weeks. I learned that Madison had 2 phones. The second one was hidden in the barn, wrapped in a sock, duct-taped under the floorboard behind the grain bin. She never called on it, only texted. I cloned the SIM card. I didn't read the messages right away. I wanted the full picture, not fragments. Not yet. Sheriff Sanders kept coming. Same fake smile, same casual jokes. He asked questions he shouldn't know to ask, whether the motion sensors were still tripping on the east side of the property, or if the new water filters I installed were working yet. Things I'd never told him, things only someone close to me could have shared. I responded with polite nods and slow, empty answers. I let them both talk more than they needed to. People always do, eventually. Then I made the call, not to the sheriff, not to Madison. I called Ramon Delaney, Ray, to those of us who fought with him, Afghanistan, Iraq, other places not even on the map. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but when I said, "It's not good," he replied, "How bad?" I said, "I need eyes, not questions." He said, "Give me 48 hours." While I waited, I read the texts. Most were coded, references to packages, deliveries, clearance windows, but the meaning was obvious. One thread stood out, a name I hadn't seen before, Coyote. The messages from Madison were short. He's getting suspicious. We can't wait much longer. Coyote ready for drop, just say when. I'll keep him distracted, make it look random. And then, make it messy. It has to look like a break-in gone wrong. My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to get rid of me. They were preparing a narrative. Insurance fraud, a violent death, a decorated veteran, paranoid, unstable, killed in what would look like a drug-related robbery gone bad. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted to bury me under a lie. I checked the cabin for tracking devices. Found 2, one under my truck's wheel well, the other inside a lamp in my bedroom. Madison must have planted them. Probably when I was out back running wire to the generator, I didn't disable them. Not yet. I used them. I made sure to be unpredictable. I started going on long hikes at odd hours. I left guns in odd places, left the front door unlocked on purpose. They were watching me, waiting for a pattern. I gave them none. Then I started laying the groundwork. Small things at first. I rerouted the backup generator to power a hidden camera system. I rewired the porch lights to flash in sequence if the south motion sensors were tripped. I buried spike strips at the tree line near the fire road, just deep enough to not be visible but shallow enough to shred tires if someone rushed in blind. Ray arrived on a foggy morning before sunrise. Quiet as ever. He'd changed, more gray in his beard, scars I didn't recognize, but his eyes were the same. Alert. Dangerous. He didn't ask much, just said, "Point me where you want me." Together we mapped out the whole area. I showed him the texts, the devices, the names. He didn't react, just nodded once and said, "They're already close." I asked how he knew. He looked out toward the tree line, because they just stopped watching. That means they're ready to act. That night, Madison came to bed in silk, first time in weeks. She smiled, touched my chest like nothing had changed. She whispered, "I've missed you lately. You've been distant." I kissed her forehead and said, "Just thinking about tomorrow." And I meant it. The next day, I stayed home. Cut wood, maintained the greenhouse, kept a shotgun nearby, casually. I saw her checking her phone twice, once when she thought I wasn't looking. She didn't smile. She was waiting for a signal. I gave it to her. Around 6:40 p.m., I faked a limp. Subtle. Enough for her to notice. Told her my knee was acting up from an old injury. I poured a glass of bourbon, took a painkiller, a sugar pill in an Advil bottle, and let her believe I was settling in for the night. By 9:15, she was pacing, said she was going to bed early. I nodded, barely acknowledging her. By 9:37, the power cut out. I didn't move. I'd set the backup to fail on purpose. I heard the back window open. No alarm. They thought they were smart. Coyote moved like a pro. Black boots, no sound, NV goggles, suppressed weapon. But he didn't know he was already on film. He didn't know Ray was in the crawlspace under the floor, tracking his steps by thermal pulse. He didn't know the coffee mug I forgot to take off the table was reflective ceramic, just enough to show me his silhouette behind me. He raised the gun. I let him, just for a second. Then I dropped, rolled behind the couch, and fired once. Center mass. He went down without a word, just a gurgle. Ray moved fast, secured the body. I looked toward the hallway. Madison stood there, barefoot, eyes wide. Not screaming, not surprised, just disappointed. That's when I knew. She was hoping it would work. She didn't love me. She loved the insurance policy with my name on it. I didn't say a word to her that night. I just looked at her and said quietly, "You picked the wrong soldier." And that's when everything really began to unravel. The body was still warm when we pulled it out to the edge of the woods. Ray wrapped it in a tarp, silent and fast, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Because he had. Coyote didn't carry ID, of course. Just a burner phone, 2 magazines, a knife taped to the small of his back, and a plastic keycard with a black wolf printed on it. No words, no markings, just that symbol. Ray looked at the card and muttered, "Not local, this is above freelance." I didn't answer. My eyes were already on Madison. She was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, pretending to shiver. Her performance was good. Trembling lips, wide eyes, shallow breathing, but not too good. That's how you knew it was fake. People who've never been shot at always overdo fear. I asked her one question. "Where'd you find him?" She blinked. "Find who?" "The man you invited into our home." She gave me a look of wounded innocence. I didn't bother repeating myself. I just dropped the blood-smeared keycard on the table. Her eyes flicked to it for 1 second too long. Then she whispered, "I don't know what that is." Ray snorted quietly behind me. I sat down across from her, elbows on my knees. "You know what the real mistake was, Madison? It wasn't underestimating me. It was thinking I'd react with emotion." She finally snapped. "What the hell are you talking about? Some lunatic breaks into our house, you kill him, and now you're accusing me?" I didn't blink. He didn't break in. He used your code on the back door. That shut her up. The silence was thick. Then she tried to pivot. "Okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I trusted someone I shouldn't have. But I didn't want you hurt. You paid him to make it look like a robbery gone bad." Her voice dropped, ice slipping into the words now. "You don't know that." "I do," I said. "And the thing is, I also know it wasn't just about me. You've done this before." She flinched, just barely. A micro-expression, a tell. Ray stepped forward. "Should I call the others?" I nodded. Madison's head snapped toward me. "What others?" "You didn't think I was the only one they targeted, did you?" I said. Because the more I thought about it, the quiet way she appeared in my life, the ease with which she adapted to my routines, the perfect timing of Sheriff Sanders and his check-ins, the more I started seeing a pattern, and I wasn't the first one. I was just the first one who lived. Ray had spent the past 24 hours going through reports. Veterans dying in remote areas. Each one insured, all with partners or spouses they met within the same 18-month window. A few suicides, a few accidents, a few home invasions that didn't leave any survivors, and all of them, every single one, had some sort of connection to a local law enforcement figure or contractor who just happened to be nearby when things went wrong. We weren't looking at a love triangle. We were looking at a network. By midnight, 2 more of my old unit were on site, Marcus Hills and Andy Lewis. Marcus had done data for the NSA for years, and Andy had interrogated some of the worst the Middle East had to offer. We weren't a SEAL team anymore, but when we sat down in my living room, surrounded by maps, phones, weapons, and coffee, we didn't need to be. This was war, just a different kind, and we knew how to fight wars. We broke Madison down slowly, not with torture, with pressure, with precision. Andy asked questions she didn't expect. Personal ones. What was the name of your high school? She got it wrong twice. Where did your sister go to college? She didn't have a sister, but she said Ohio State. That's the thing about liars, they forget their own stories. She cracked after 4 hours, not all at once. Piece by piece. First, she admitted the sheriff was involved. Then she confessed to the life insurance scam. She and Sanders had been running it with help from higher up. I asked what that meant. She said only 2 words. They watch. I pressed her harder. Who? She just shook her head. You wouldn't believe me. Ray lost patience, grabbed her by the shirt, lifted her halfway out of the chair. Try us. She looked up at him, dead in the eyes, and whispered, You think you're protecting your country, but this is your country now. That stopped all of us. A cold silence filled the room. No one moved. What does that mean? I asked. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. People like you don't get it. You were tools, useful in the desert, in the jungle. But now you're liabilities. You know too much. You see too much. They don't need warriors anymore. They need silence. Her voice changed when she said that last part, like she was repeating it, like she'd been told to say it. I turned to Marcus. Pull the rest of those names. Every dead vet, every widow, every sheriff, every deputy, every coroner who signed off. Ray looked at me. You thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah, I said. We're not dealing with corruption anymore. Then what are we dealing with? I stared at the bloody tarp out by the trees, at the flashing lights of our hidden cams, at Madison, still smirking through a split lip, and I said, infiltration. By dawn, the mountain air tasted different, not fresh, not clean, just cold and still. Madison was tied to a chair in the tool shed, not tortured, not beaten, just kept in place. She wasn't crying anymore. That stopped hours ago. She'd been trained. That much was obvious now. The way she regulated her breathing, the way she studied every man in the room, always calculating, always processing. We had downloaded everything from Coyote's phone by then. The GPS logs alone made my skin crawl. He'd tracked 6 properties across 4 states, all remote, all owned by veterans, all owners now dead. Different counties, different accidents, same blueprint, and in every single location? A local law enforcement contact, sometimes a deputy, sometimes a state investigator, all of them scrubbed clean. No official investigations, just short reports, closed cases, forgotten names. Marcus traced 3 shell corporations that paid out the life insurance. Each one redirected through foreign accounts, Estonia, Nigeria, even a Cayman Islands fund connected to something that claimed to be a humanitarian NGO. But here's the thing. It wasn't about the money. That was just the sugarcoating. It was a purge, an organized, methodical purge of trained American soldiers, the ones who knew how to operate off-grid, who had experience in surveillance, tactics, asymmetrical warfare, the kind of people who could stand up when things went dark. They weren't just silencing loose ends. They were erasing future threats. Ray said it best. This ain't cleanup, this is preemptive. I knew what we had to do, not legally, not officially. That wouldn't work. The people pulling these strings didn't wear uniforms. They wore suits, grant money, church smiles, NGO credentials. You don't stop that with a courtroom. You stop it like we used to stop it overseas. Quiet, precise, final. We didn't take Madison to the authorities. We didn't need to. Instead, we brought in others, men like us. Quiet men. Scarred, invisible to the public eye, but very, very real. We called it the tribunal, though no one said the word out loud. They flew in from Utah, Georgia, New Mexico. They brought no luggage, no names, just presence. She tried to plead with them. Lied, twisted the story, claimed abuse, manipulation, said we were mercenaries who'd snapped. One of the men, a former Marine sniper named Brody, listened in silence, then laid down a folder. Photos. Of her with Sanders. Of her walking away from a burned-out cabin 2 years ago. Of another man, an Army mechanic whose body was found in a ditch. She didn't speak after that. The tribunal made their decision in under an hour. No drama, no speeches, just a quiet conclusion, a consensus. Madison and Sanders were to be removed, not as revenge, not out of hatred, but as a correction. We lured the sheriff in that night. He thought Madison had survived the hit and needed an exit, thought she was scared, that I'd gone into hiding. He pulled up in his cruiser, smug and casual, walking straight into the room with his badge hanging on his chest like it meant something. He didn't leave that room. What happened there doesn't need to be written. Not because it was brutal, though it was, but because it was necessary. Sometimes justice isn't served with robes and gavels. Sometimes it wears mud-caked boots and smells like gun oil. After it was done, we burned the evidence. The phones, the hard drives, even the shed. We didn't bury them, we erased them. That's what they had planned for me. For all of us. We just returned the favor. But it didn't stop there. Marcus leaked the structure of the network to 5 trusted names: veterans, journalists, ex-CIA, cyberforensics contacts. Not a full reveal, just a map. Just enough to cause panic in the system. Enough to spark investigations in quiet corners. Within a week, 2 other accidents had been stopped mid-operation in Oregon and Virginia. Someone tipped off the press anonymously. The right people started asking questions. The network cracked, not publicly, not yet, but from the inside. Some of them ran, some disappeared, a few turned up dead, and some we let go. For now, because the message had been delivered, we see you now, and we are not afraid. Madison's blood dried on my cabin floor for 2 days before the rain came. Ray offered to help me rebuild, so did the others. But I told them no. The dream was dead. The life I built, the quiet one, it had been a lie wrapped in hope. But something deeper had risen from the ashes. Purpose. I stayed on the land, but it's not a home anymore. It's a base. I no longer pretend I'm retired. I know better now. I've seen the enemy, and they're not out there in the desert anymore. They're here. Behind desks, in uniforms, in pillow talk and handshakes and smiling press conferences. But so am I, and I'm not alone. This story isn't about revenge. It's about readiness. And when the time comes again, when they reach for another trigger in the dark, they won't find a sleeping veteran. They'll find a hunter, waiting, watching, armed. Because I know now, the war didn't end. It just came home, and I'm still fighting. Life doesn't always give you clear answers. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who cut the deepest. Sometimes the quiet life you build turns out to be the battlefield you didn't see coming. But even in all of that, betrayal, pain, blood, you have to hold on to one thing: yourself. No matter how dark it gets, never lose what makes you human. Not your heart. Not your honor. Because in the end, that's the only line the world can't cross unless you let it. If you made it this far, thank you. And if this story struck a nerve, Do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and drop a comment down below. Tell me what you think. Share your thoughts. On this channel, you'll hear real stories. Stories about ordinary people who faced the worst and stood back up, about betrayal, survival, and the strength it takes to stay human when the world turns cold. There's more coming. Until next time, stay sharp and take care of each other.